Hi, this is Sarit Switzer, and welcome to the It Is Taught podcast, a podcast devoted to the teachings of Rabbi Shneur Zalman of Liadi as recorded in his most famous work, the Tanya. My hope for this show is to make these teachings accessible and relatable to the average person, regardless of prior Jewish education or affiliation. The episodes follow the prescribed daily study portions and are meant to serve as practical lessons in how to live your life as your true self and develop an authentic and powerful relationship with your Creator. I have personally experienced the effects the study of this work has had on me, and I'm excited to share what I can of this knowledge with you. So please join me on this journey of learning, self-growth, and connection with your source. Hi, and welcome to the It Is Taught podcast. This is episode 464 for the 8th of Adar in a regular year. So today we're going to talk about self-esteem. So take a moment and think about your self-esteem. How high or low is your self-esteem? Self-esteem is something that many of us struggle with. And what we're going to learn today is that, ironically, the root of self-esteem, of low self-esteem, is in fact not thinking too low of yourself at all. It's actually thinking too highly of yourself. What do I mean by this? Well, let's think of, some examples of low self-esteem. Somebody looking in the mirror, feeling like that they are ugly, they aren't pretty enough, maybe thinking about themselves that they're not smart enough, maybe they're clumsy, maybe, there's an endless list of ways that we are self-critical, that we think about all of our negative traits, all of the things about us that we really don't like, that we think are flawed, that we think are not okay about us. Now, the thing is, what we often fail to recognize in telling ourselves these stories, berating ourselves in this kind of manner, and thinking about and focusing on all of our flaws, what we often fail to recognize is that in doing so, we are actually attributing a certain power to ourselves that really isn't there. Meaning to say that when let's say you have a person who thinks that they're not attractive and they feel really unattractive and they walk around, really hunched over and all that kind of stuff. Now, the thing is, who created them that way? Who created them with the particular face that they have? They didn't create themselves that way. God created them that way. God created each one of us perfectly. God created each one of us with a specific intellect, with specific features, with specific personalities, with specific idiosyncrasies, desires, cravings, all kinds of things like that. So to berate ourselves for our inherent character traits, which really is, if you think about it, what low self-esteem is all about, really doesn't make any sense, because who gave us these character traits? We didn't give them to ourselves. We didn't create ourselves. So if we did not create ourselves, how can we berate ourselves for being who we are just by nature of being born? We didn't, it's one thing to maybe try to push ourselves to be our best self. But when it comes to our core character traits, our core features, these are things that were given to us by God, that we were born into this world. God created us in this way, and this is what it is. And sometimes we don't always see it, but ultimately we know that God makes things perfectly. And even if something is flawed, which we've been learning in the past few episodes, that we actually were created in a very flawed way, there was a reason for God creating us in this flawed manner. So this is where it starts to get a little bit more nuanced and a little bit more, interesting, where on the one hand, when we look at our basic core makeup, whether we're talking about physically or spiritually or, emotionally, whatever it is, first thing that we need to recognize in order to get away from this low self-esteem thinking is that we didn't create ourselves this way. It's not our fault. Our inherent nature is not something that we chose. It's the way that God created us. So if anything, we want to blame God. We want to say, God, why did you make me in such a way with these flawed character traits? But if you've been following along the past few episodes, what you now have come to recognize and come to learn is that indeed there's a very important purpose that God created you in this manner. The purpose for this is to be able to overcome these flaws that you have, to refine yourself, to not let this serpent skin, which is what we call the body, what the Zohar calls the body, to hold you back from serving God properly, from connecting with your godly soul and having your godly soul overcome the body and overcome the animal soul. So that's the basic idea. And so let's get into the text and see how the Alter Rebbe explains this. For context, we're going to be concluding chapter 31 today. And just to kind of, bring everything into focus of where we're at right now. So the Alter Rebbe has been taking us on this journey, first through breaking down our ego, breaking down our sense of self, which for the vast majority of us is our animal soul and our body with which we identify, and just realizing how flawed it is and realizing how far from God it is. But then the next step to that was recognizing that this shouldn't make you depressed, God forbid, but in fact, this should motivate you. This recognition of your flawed human nature should motivate you to want to overcome it, to break it, to come to a state of being heartbroken, and to have compassion for the godly soul part of you, the part of God that inside of you that is trapped within this body and within this animal soul, and to want to take it out of exile and bring it into a state of redemption. And the way that we do this is very clear. It's not a mystery. It's through Torah and Mitzvos. So this should motivate a person to want to do Torah and Mitzvos and to really want to return to God. This is where we're at starting today. So then the Alter Rebbe continues today, and he says that if we want to increase the tshuva, this return to God that we've been describing about, and we want to add more joy from the depth of the heart and make it even stronger, the way that we can do this is by comforting our heart from it being sad, so from being heartbroken, because as we described, we've already gone through this journey of where we broke our heart and we got it to this place of being heartbroken because it realizes how flawed it is and how far it is from God. So the Alter Rebbe says this is what a person should tell themselves. So yes, it's true. My animal soul, my ego, my sense of self, my body are all extremely far from God. They're really in a low place. But the truth is, this is where the low self-esteem thing comes in. I didn't make myself. So God made me. And why did God make me in this way? Why did God make it that my godly soul, this godly part of me, this part of God, this part of God's light that fills and surrounds all the worlds, and everything exists as if not in nothing in comparison to it. He took this godly thing and made it come down and be vested, be enclosed within the mashcha dechivia, the serpent skin, and this smelly drop. The Alter Rebbe describes it as being, meaning the semen. We all come from the semen of our fathers. So why did this happen? And that's a really good question, right? It's like God is this is a topic that is brought up in Chassidus over and over and over again. There's many discussions in Chassidus about this exact topic. So the Alter Rebbe is going to address it a bit here, is that what's the purpose of this great descent of the godly soul down here into this world and into this physical body and animal soul? So the Alter Rebbe says this descent is for the sake of an ascent, to raise up the animal soul that comes from Klipas Noga and all of its garments. Remember the garments of thought, speech, and action of the animal soul that we described, to raise it back up to God. And the way that we do this is by specifically enclothing it in thought, speech, and action of the Torah. So we've addressed this before, but yeah, as much as we can talk down the body and the animal soul so much, the truth is we need these things in order to keep Torah and Mitzvahs. Torah and Mitzvahs are very physical things that need physical bodies to do. So this is the whole point, is that we take this flawed physical body, flawed animal soul, and we channel it and we use it in order to elevate it back up to God. And the Alter Rebbe says that we're going to explain this further on at length. This is coming up in chapters 35, 36, and 37 of the Tanya, so stay tuned for later episodes about this, when we're going to talk about the whole purpose for which the world was created, and that this, in fact, is the whole purpose for which the world was created. And so when a person recognizes this, then they have a mission. It's like if anybody has ever heard about man's search for meaning, Viktor Frankl, it's like this whole thing of where does happiness come from? Where does the survival instinct come from? Is when you have a meaning, when you have a purpose to your life. So now it's like this whole self-esteem talk and low self-esteem, it all vanishes. It all goes away when you realize that you have a purpose and what your purpose is. And it's not to sit and wallow about your flaws. It's to actually take your flawed self and to serve God with that flawed self that you have. And this is the whole idea of what it says in Tehillim chapter 25, verse 1, Elecha Hashem nafshi esa, to you, God, I raise my soul. That really, you're just going to want to, like, this is the whole point, is that you're going to want to spend all of your days to connect your thoughts, to connect your speech with God's thoughts and with God's speech, and also all of the different the body of halacha, like all the different laws, to connect your body with those things in the action of doing the mitzvahs. And this is what Tehillim describes in chapter 19, verse 8, Mashivat Nafesh, the restoration of the soul, meaning that it's being restored back to its place and to its root. And about this is written, and this is also from Tehillim, the same chapter 19, verse 9. So right after that, where it says, Likkutei Hashem yisharim esamchei lev. God's commandments are just, they gladden the heart. So that's the end of the section for today. That's the end of the chapter for today, chapter 31. So in conclusion, this whole idea of self-esteem, low self-esteem, is really a trap, and it's really a distraction from our real purpose. First of all, you didn't create yourself. So whatever flaws you have, why are you berating yourself for these things? You didn't, you're giving yourself too much power. Realize that you were created by God, and God, knowing that God is perfect, there's a reason for these things. It doesn't mean that you're not flawed. In fact, as we've learned, you are extremely flawed, but that's okay, because the whole idea is to actually take your flawed self and to channel it and use this flawed self to elevate it through Torah and Mitzvos back to its source in God above. So that's the end of the section. That's the end of the chapter. And we will continue with a very famous chapter of the Tanya tomorrow. Stay tuned for that. Chapter 32, the heart chapter, Lev. And I'll speak to you then. Thanks for listening to the It Is Taught podcast, hosted by Sarit Switzer. This podcast is dedicated in loving memory of my maternal grandfather, Avraham Yitzchak ben Binyamin HaKohen of blessed memory. Music by Shoshana. If you enjoyed this episode and would like to support the show, please share it with others and subscribe on YouTube, Apple iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. And make sure to leave us a 5-star review. To find out more about the It Is Taught project, including more information on my soon-to-be published book, please visit our website, itistaught.com. To catch the latest from me, follow me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Looking forward to speaking with you tomorrow, and until then, have a great day.